Welcome the anointed ones. Some souls aren't born into the world, they're released into it, like divine disruptions wearing human skin. From the moment you arrived, the atmosphere shifted, not metaphorically, but literally. Studies have shown that every person carries an electromagnetic field unique to their emotional frequency. Now imagine what happens when a soul like yours enters a world built on deception, control, and illusion. It's like dropping lightning into a pool of gasoline. Things start to crack, systems glitch, people either wake up or turn against you, and that's exactly why your life has never followed a normal script. You weren't unlucky, you were noticed. Before you could even talk, unseen forces marked you. The strange teachers, the odd coincidences, the betrayals that didn't make sense. They were all early signs that your presence was shaking invisible foundations. You've probably asked yourself, why do people act weird around me? Why does everything feel like it's watching me? Well, maybe it's because it is, not in a creepy Big Brother way, though that's debatable, but because higher forces, both light and dark, have always tracked the ones carrying divine architecture. You're the kind of being that can't blend in even if you tried. Heaven made sure of that. And here's the twist. While others were busy playing life by the rules, you were unconsciously bending them. While they learned to fit in, you learned to interfere. Not out of rebellion, but resonance. Your very existence exposes imbalance. You don't need to speak to make impact. You just arrive, and the atmosphere starts rearranging itself. So if you've ever felt hunted, misunderstood, or like your name was whispered in spiritual boardrooms, congratulations. You're not cursed, you're catalytic. The world doesn't chase mediocrity, it chases what it can't control. And you, my friend, are the unsolvable equation it's been trying to decode since birth. Welcome to the truth behind your targeting. Number one, you were born with a frequency that disrupts systems. You were born with a frequency that disrupts systems. That's the real reason life never felt normal for you. Every chosen one carries a vibration that naturally interferes with control structures, now not just in society, but in energy, emotion, and thought. From a young age, you might have noticed how your presence unsettled people who thrived on manipulation or control. You didn't even have to say anything. Your spirit already spoke the language of truth, and truth has a way of scrambling every lie it touches. The world operates on invisible systems, emotional manipulation, social hierarchies, spiritual suppression, all built to keep people asleep and predictable. But when someone like you enters the equation, that predictability disappears. People don't know how to handle you because your energy doesn't submit to programming. It bends reality around it. You walk into spaces that were designed to drain others, and suddenly those same spaces lose power over you. That's not rebellion. That's divine interference coded into your DNA. You've likely noticed how some people seem to react to you without reason. Sudden jealousy, hostility, or discomfort that feels out of proportion. It's not really about you personally. It's about what your frequency represents. Your energy exposes what's artificial. You make hidden motives surface. And for people who've built their lives on illusion, that's terrifying. They may not understand why they feel it, but their spirit does. It recognizes something ancient, ungovernable, and deeply alive inside you. This is why you were often treated like a threat, even when you were kind, quiet, or simply existing. The energy you carry interrupts corruption in its natural habitat. It's the equivalent of sunlight in a room that's been dark for years. The dust doesn't like being seen, but the light isn't here to negotiate. That's why so many systems, family, workplace, social groups, tried to label you as difficult, too intense, or out of place. It wasn't you being defective, it was you being disruptive to the status quo. You don't have to try to be powerful, you just are. Your presence carries the kind of charge that recalibrates whatever it touches. That's why you were noticed since birth, not because you were easy to control, but because you were born with a frequency that never would be. Number 2, they targeted you early to prevent you from remembering who you are. They targeted you early to stop you from remembering who you are. That's the silent mission that began the moment you entered this world. The real threat was never your potential. It was your memory. Somewhere deep inside you, there's an awareness of divine origin, a knowing that you came here with spiritual authority and cosmic intelligence. If you had remembered that too soon, nothing and no one could have contained you. So life threw distractions, betrayals, heartbreaks, and confusion at you, hoping to bury that knowing under pain and doubt. Every chosen one experiences this, a strange heaviness from childhood, as if life was already at war with their peace. The teachers who misunderstood you, the relatives who tried to crush your confidence, the early traumas that made you question your worth. None of it was random. The goal was to break your alignment before it fully formed. When the soul forgets its divinity, it starts living like an orphan in a world that secretly fears its power. That's what they wanted, a divine being with amnesia. But here's the twist. Every attempt to erase your memory only deepened your eventual awakening. The pain you endured didn't destroy you. It left clues. Every injustice triggered a faint reminder that something about this world wasn't right, that you were seeing through layers others couldn't detect. The very experiences meant to silence you became breadcrumbs leading you back to your original identity. When you start to wake up, the system around you senses it. People who once ignored you suddenly feel uneasy. Opportunities appear and vanish. Life tests you harder, as if the universe is checking if you're really ready to reclaim what was stolen. And when you finally remember, not mentally but spiritually, the entire pattern shifts. You stop reacting and start operating. You stop chasing approval and start carrying authority. That's when they know the containment failed. This is why you've always felt like life tried to keep you distracted. Every storm, every heartbreak, every toxic situation was a detour meant to keep you from your divine recall. But it didn't work, because the kind of memory you carry isn't stored in the mind. It's encoded in the soul. And no amount of darkness can erase what God Himself wrote into your being. Number 3, you are the living antivirus to a corrupted human program. You are the living antivirus to a corrupted human program. The systems running this world feed on deception, greed, fear, and conformity. And your soul was designed to interrupt that cycle. The moment your energy enters any environment, it begins identifying the false codes operating there. You don't do it consciously. Your spirit just knows when something isn't pure. You can sense manipulation, hidden motives, or emotional imbalance long before words confirm it. That's because your very being was created to detect and neutralize corruption in all its forms. This is why you often find yourself in situations that feel unfair or spiritually heavy. It's not that you attract chaos, it's that your light exposes it. People living through ego and deceit can't stay comfortable in your presence. Your energy reveals what they've been trying to hide, from others and from themselves. That's why some people suddenly turn against you or start acting differently without clear reason. It's not personal hatred, it's spiritual incompatibility. You trigger the system error within them. When you walk into a room, energy shifts. The atmosphere gets tense because your frequency doesn't match the corruption embedded in the environment. It's like truth entering a space that's been surviving on lies. The darkness senses that something undefiled just arrived, and it panics. That's why chosen ones are often misunderstood or even attacked for no clear reason. Your presence makes hidden sickness surface. You're not being rejected, you're being recognized by the infection that fears healing. The irony is that the same people who resist you are the ones who need you most. Your authenticity threatens the illusions they've built their lives around, but it also carries the medicine for their freedom. Still, not everyone can handle that kind of exposure. Some would rather destroy the cure than confront the truth it reveals. That's why your life has been a constant clash between purity and pretense. You were never meant to blend in with the system. You were meant to debug it. That's why you can't tolerate hypocrisy or spiritual manipulation for long. You don't just survive corruption, you decode it. Every challenge you face isn't proof of weakness, but confirmation of function. You're not here to adapt to this world's sickness. You're here to remind it what health feels like. Number 4, your spirit signed a contract to collapse false kingdoms. You came into this world with a contract sealed in spirit, an agreement to walk straight into broken systems and expose them from the inside out. You weren't placed in certain families or environments by accident. Every toxic circle, every manipulative figure, every system that tried to control or silence you was part of a larger battlefield. Heaven didn't send you to be comfortable. It sent you as divine infiltration. Your very existence was a strategic move. The darkness that surrounded you wasn't proof of your punishment. It was proof of your purpose. You were born into corrupted structures not to fit their mold, but to break their patterns. The dysfunction in your bloodline wasn't meant to define you. It was meant to end with you. That's why you often felt like the outsider in your own family or community. You were never meant to blend with the culture of silence or cycles of spiritual decay. You were the one assigned to stop them. And stopping them doesn't always look glorious. Sometimes it looks like years of confusion, isolation, and emotional exhaustion, while your soul pulls the foundation apart, piece by piece. Every betrayal you faced carried hidden intelligence. Every painful relationship, every form of rejection, it wasn't random. Those were pressure points that activated your spiritual demolition power. Heaven equipped you with sensitivity, empathy, and discernment. Tools that allow you to feel what's wrong in a system so deeply that it begins to break through you. You're not weak because things affect you. You're powerful because your energy absorbs what's dying, purifies it, and returns it as wisdom. This is why your pain has been so precise. It always found you where the cracks were deepest. It wasn't life being cruel. It was your contract unfolding. God knew the only way to bring certain false empires down was from within, through someone strong enough to endure their pressure without becoming them. You were that someone. You weren't sent to condemn. You were sent to collapse what was never meant to stand. And the beautiful part is this: after the dust settles, what remains is truth. That's the real reason you were chosen. Not just to survive the ruins, but to build something sacred from their ashes. Number 5, you're not different. You're the evolutionary prototype. You're not just different. You're a preview of what humanity is becoming. Every chosen one carries spiritual technology that hasn't yet been mass-released into the collective. Your way of thinking, feeling, and perceiving life isn't strange. It's simply advanced. You process emotion, energy, and truth at a level most people aren't wired for yet. That's why normal conversations often drain you and shallow motives leave you exhausted. You're tuned to a higher bandwidth of awareness, operating on frequencies others haven't even discovered. Your perception doesn't stop at what people say. You feel the undertones, the intent behind the words, the vibration behind the action. It's like your spirit is built with sensors that detect truth and falsehood instantly. You can't explain it logically, but you know when something's off. That knowing used to make you doubt yourself because the world taught you to question your intuition. But what they call overthinking or sensitivity is actually your evolved operating system doing its job. You were also gifted with emotional depth that's not meant to make life harder. It's meant to make it realer. You feel more because you were born to translate emotion into understanding. You see meaning where others see madness. You find purpose in pain where others only see suffering. That's not weakness. It's divine intelligence flowing through empathy. It's what allows you to sense the state of the world long before events unfold. That's why chaos feels heavier on your spirit. You feel humanity's growing pains like labor contractions before rebirth. And even when the world tries to break you, your recovery speed reveals your true design. You've been through storms that should have erased your identity, yet you rebuild every time stronger, sharper, and more awake. That's not coincidence. That's evolution in motion. You're carrying the blueprint for resilience, for consciousness that doesn't depend on validation or tradition. The reason you often feel misunderstood isn't because you're flawed. It's because you're from the timeline they're evolving toward. You're not behind, you're ahead. The day will come when what feels foreign about you will become familiar to everyone else. Until then, your isolation isn't punishment, it's preparation. You're not the outcast of this age, you're the prototype of the next one. Number 6, the attacks against you were spiritual quality control. The attacks against you were never random. They were spiritual quality control. Every chosen one goes through a kind of purification process, and for you, that process came disguised as pain, loss, and betrayal. What you thought was life being unfair was actually God removing anything that couldn't go with you into your higher purpose. It wasn't punishment, it was preparation. Every disappointment, every setback, every heartbreak was a form of spiritual engineering, fine-tuning your character until only the strongest, most authentic version of you remained. When you're called to carry light on the level you were designed for, the impurities of ego, pride, and attachment have to burn away. The world might see your pain and think you're being destroyed, but heaven sees it as refinement. Diamonds don't shine because they were spared from pressure. They shine because they survived it. And that's exactly what happened to you. Every time life turned against you, something false fell off. An illusion, a dependence, a weakness that couldn't exist in the purity of your assignment. Your suffering had precision. It always found you in the areas where you were holding on too tightly, to people, expectations, or old versions of yourself. When those things were ripped away, it felt cruel, but looking back, you can see the pattern. Every loss exposed a deeper layer of truth. You learned discernment through betrayal. You learned strength through loneliness. You learned peace, not by finding it, but by becoming it after chaos refused to leave you alone. That's how heaven trains its warriors, through fire, not to break them, but to prove their authenticity. You see, anyone can act chosen when life is easy, but only those who've been crushed, misunderstood, and still choose love stand as living proof of divine endurance. You became that proof. The attacks didn't destroy you. They revealed what could never be destroyed. Now when you speak, your words carry a weight that only the refined can carry. When you walk into a room, your energy holds authority that can't be faked. You've been through the furnace, and you came out gold. The suffering wasn't evidence of God's absence. It was evidence of His precision. Number 7, your isolation wasn't rejection. It was containment. Your isolation was never rejection, it was containment. You weren't cut off because you were unworthy. You were set apart because you carried something too sacred to be tampered with. Heaven had to keep your energy clean while it matured. There were moments you begged for connection, validation, and belonging. But what you didn't see then was that too much exposure too soon would have polluted your spirit. You weren't being punished, you were being preserved. The reason certain friendships crumbled, relationships failed, and doors stayed closed wasn't because you lacked anything. It was because what you carried inside couldn't survive in those environments. You were radioactive to corruption, and corruption is allergic to light. When your frequency is still stabilizing, too many wrong attachments can distort your signal. So, heaven allowed silence to become your teacher. Loneliness became your training ground. You were being rewired to depend on divine connection more than human approval. That's why the quiet years were so confusing. You saw others getting opportunities, attention, and validation while your life looked like a waiting room that never called your name. But what was really happening was hidden development. Your spirit was growing roots so deep that no storm could ever uproot you later. God wasn't ignoring you. He was isolating your purpose so the world couldn't interfere with its formation. In isolation, your senses sharpened. You started seeing truth where others saw illusion. You began to recognize manipulation in its subtlest forms. You discovered the difference between company and connection, attention and alignment, noise and direction. The very silence you hated became the space where your discernment evolved. You learned to read energy, to feel intention, to detect deception, not because you wanted to, but because solitude trained you to listen differently. Now you can walk into a room and sense who's pure and who's performing. That clarity came from your season of separation. The isolation didn't make you cold, it made you clean. It turned you into someone who can stand alone and still radiate authority. Heaven hid you, not to forget you, but to fortify you. You weren't being ignored, you were being incubated. And now that your frequency is stable, nothing impure can touch you without being transformed or exposed. Number 8, you carry codes that can't be cloned. You carry codes that can't be cloned. No matter how hard people try to copy your essence, something always exposes the imitation. They can mimic your tone, your style, your story, even your suffering, but they'll never reproduce your spirit. That's because what you carry isn't learned, it's embedded. Your anointing isn't something you picked up through experience or personality. It was wired into your spiritual DNA long before you were born. It's a celestial watermark, invisible to the eye, undeniable in presence. That's why your influence doesn't come from effort, it comes from authenticity. When you speak, people feel something ancient. When you move, you awaken something in others that words alone can't explain. You were designed to transmit light, not just express it. And those who try to duplicate your vibration without carrying your code end up glitching. They can perform the surface, but they can't sustain the spirit. Because what you have isn't an act, it's an inheritance. This is why you've probably noticed people studying you like a blueprint, watching how you think, how you create, how you move through hardship. Some even try to wear your pain as a costume, thinking it will give them the same power. But what they don't realize is that your authority came through endurance, not aesthetics. You didn't earn your light by looking spiritual. You earned it by surviving the fire with your soul intact. The oil on your life cost you something they've never paid. And here's the truth. Imitation can copy style, but it can't duplicate spirit. It can mimic confidence, but not conviction. It can steal content, but not consciousness. When people encounter the real you, they feel a frequency they can't define, something that transcends charisma and talent. That's your code at work. It announces your authenticity before you even open your mouth. So don't be frustrated when others try to replicate you. It's proof that you carry something original enough to threaten imitation. Let them copy what's visible. They'll still miss what's internal. Because your energy isn't manufactured, it's divine. The Source placed a spiritual signature inside you that no one can counterfeit. You are the real document in a world of duplicates, and heaven has already stamped your authenticity. Number 9. You're the bridge between dimensions. You've always felt caught between worlds because you were built to stand in the gap. You are the bridge between the seen and unseen, between the physical and the divine. There's a reason you've never fully belonged anywhere. You were never meant to. You carry the consciousness of heaven in a human frame, which means your spirit operates in dimensions your body is still learning to interpret. That tension you've felt your entire life, that pull between wanting to ascend and having to stay grounded, is the evidence of your assignment. You're the intersection where eternity meets time. You experience life differently because your perception filters reality through both spirit and matter. While others react only to what they can see, you sense what's being orchestrated in the unseen. That sensitivity can be exhausting because you're constantly translating divine information into human understanding. You feel burdens that aren't yours, receive insights you didn't ask for, and carry emotions that seem too deep for this world. It's not confusion, it's communion. You are constantly in dialogue with both realms, serving as a messenger that keeps them connected. Your presence allows heaven to touch earth through action, language, and vibration. When you speak, truth doesn't just inform, it transforms. When you comfort someone, it's not just kindness, it's spirit transmitting healing through human touch. That's why you've often felt drained after helping others. Bridging dimensions costs energy, but it's also why people feel peace, clarity, or conviction after being around you. They've tasted the atmosphere you live in every day, and their spirit recognizes it, even if their mind doesn't. This dual existence also explains your inner conflicts. There's a part of you that craves stillness and solitude, the heaven within you, and another that longs to be seen and experienced, the earth within you. Learning to balance both is your lifelong mastery. Too much in spirit, and you'll disconnect from human life. Too much in matter, and you'll forget your divinity. The power is in the middle, in the bridge. You're not lost between realms, you're the translator between them. Your life teaches others how to merge the sacred with the human, how to bring divine awareness into everyday living. You weren't born to escape the world, you were born to elevate it. Number 10. They fear you because you don't need their validation to operate. They fear you because you don't need their validation to operate. That's the quiet power they can't control. In a world built on applause, approval, and external recognition, you're a glitch in the system. You don't wait to be crowned before you lead, and you don't seek permission before you move. That's unsettling to people whose entire worth depends on acceptance. You function from authority, not agreement. And that makes every insecure ego around you tremble. You learned early that the crowd's opinion is unstable currency. It changes daily, bends under pressure, and vanishes when truth walks in. So you stopped trying to buy worth from people who couldn't even afford self-awareness. You realized your calling didn't require consensus. It required obedience. That's the shift that separates you from most. You're powered by Source directly. No manager, mentor, or system can give you what you already have within. That's why attempts to intimidate or silence you never stick. You don't answer to human ranking systems. You answer to divine command. It's not arrogance, it's alignment. You move with confidence because you know your instruction came from a place higher than opinion. People who rely on validation interpret that as rebellion, but it's not rebellion, it's freedom. You've detached from the emotional chains that keep most people predictable. You don't panic when you're misunderstood, and you don't crumble when you're criticized. The same silence they use to control others only strengthens you. That's spiritual independence, and it terrifies those who've never known it. This is why you often find yourself isolated from groups or uninvited from circles you once fit into. Your presence makes hierarchy irrelevant. When you walk into a room, energy equalizes. Titles lose meaning. People who've built their worth on superiority feel invisible next to your authenticity. They can't figure out how you move so boldly without backing. But that's because your backing is unseen. What they fail to realize is that your authority doesn't come from applause, it comes from assignment. You were never meant to impress the system. You were meant to outgrow it. And every time they try to measure you by earthly standards, they come up short. You're not a threat because you want control. You're a threat because you don't need it. Number 11. Your pain was a spiritual initiation masked as suffering. Your pain wasn't punishment. It was initiation. What looked like random suffering was actually the sacred process of transformation disguised as chaos. You weren't being destroyed, you were being reconfigured. Every heartbreak, betrayal, and humiliation stripped away illusions, false attachments, and ego layers that couldn't survive the altitude of your purpose. It was never about what you lost. It was about what your soul was being calibrated to carry. You had to be emptied before you could hold something divine. Most people think elevation feels like reward, but it often feels like ruin first. The divine can't pour new wine into an old vessel, so heaven had to break your old container, the outdated mindset, the fragile self-worth, the survival identity, so you could hold the voltage of your true self. That's why your most painful seasons didn't kill you. They initiated you into a level of power you didn't even know existed. Every time someone betrayed you, your discernment sharpened. Every time you were humiliated, your ego dissolved a little more, making room for humility, the posture of true authority. Every loss expanded your emotional bandwidth to feel deeper, see clearer, and love stronger. The universe wasn't punishing you. It was entrusting you. You were being conditioned to operate at frequencies most can't withstand. The pain that once made you question your worth was actually refining your spiritual circuitry. You can now carry compassion without collapsing, wisdom without pride, and power without corruption. That's why you don't resent your suffering anymore. You understand it was sacred engineering. Heaven wasn't testing if you were strong. It was ensuring you were stable enough to transmit divine energy without distortion. This is why you no longer seek revenge or validation. You've seen behind the curtain. You realize every wound was a doorway to revelation, every setback a sacred appointment with higher consciousness. The storms didn't come to destroy you. They came to certify you. And now you walk with a quiet authority, the kind that can't be taught, only initiated through pain. You didn't survive by accident. You graduated from suffering into sovereignty. Number 12, you expose the hidden shadows in others without speaking. You've probably noticed that people either open up to you completely or become defensive for no apparent reason. That's not coincidence. It's energetic truth doing its job. You don't even have to speak. Your energy alone acts like a mirror that strips away illusions. You don't expose people by confrontation. You expose them by existing. Your presence silently pulls hidden motives, suppressed emotions, and buried guilt to the surface. Those who've spent years perfecting their masks suddenly feel naked around you and they can't quite explain why. It's not personal. It's spiritual. You carry a frequency that resonates with authenticity, and anything false begins to tremble in your atmosphere. Your light doesn't just shine, it scans. When you enter a room, people's spirits know you before their minds do. Some will be drawn to you because their soul recognizes home. Others will avoid you because your vibration threatens everything they've built on pretense. You are living truth, and truth doesn't coexist peacefully with denial. That's why people often project their shadows onto you. Instead of facing what your presence reveals in them, they'll accuse you of being too intense, too different, or too much. They'll create distance not because you did something wrong, but because they can't hide who they really are when you're near. You strip away the spiritual makeup that kept them comfortable in their illusions. And for those committed to their false identities, your existence feels like an invasion. But what feels like rejection is actually validation. The same way light forces cockroaches to scatter, your frequency compels spiritual parasites to flee. Your aura has no tolerance for deceit, manipulation, or hypocrisy. Not because you judge, but because you radiate too much truth for darkness to disguise itself. This is why even your silence feels confrontational to the dishonest. You don't need to call them out. Their own conscience does it for you in your presence. You are not a threat because you're loud. You're a threat because you're clear. You make people confront the parts of themselves they've avoided for years. Your energy doesn't seek conflict. It enforces alignment. And that's why, without uttering a single word, you expose everything pretending to be real. Number 13. You were designed to be misunderstood until the appointed time. You were never meant to be understood too soon. Every chosen soul carries a blueprint that looks like confusion to those who don't have the code. That's why your path never made sense. Not to your family, not to your friends, sometimes not even to you. You were walking a route that couldn't be mapped by logic. Heaven was scripting a story that required divine timing, not human comprehension. The misunderstanding wasn't a mistake. It was part of your protection. If people had understood your purpose before its appointed time, they would have tried to interfere with it. That's why you were constantly misread, mislabeled, and misjudged. You were called rebellious when you were actually revolutionary. They saw inconsistency where God saw transformation. They thought you were lost when heaven was simply hiding you in a process too sacred to explain. Their confusion was your camouflage. God cloaked you in misunderstanding so no one could exploit the treasure being built inside you. There's a divine irony in how life unfolds for you. The same traits people mocked, your depth, your silence, your intensity, your refusal to fit in, will become the very things that make you invaluable later. You're not behind, you're in incubation. Destiny doesn't bloom under spotlights. It matures in obscurity. When the right moment arrives, what once looked like random chaos will connect with perfect precision, and even your doubters will have to admit it was divine. You were designed to be misunderstood because your frequency belongs to the future, not the present. Those who live on surface levels can't interpret a language written in revelation. But when time catches up to your calling, everything will flip. The same mouths that gossiped will quote your words. The same eyes that rolled will look up to you for guidance. The same ones who thought you were too much will realize you were simply ahead. So don't curse the confusion. It's divine encryption. Every chosen one's story looks like nonsense until the appointed time arrives. Then suddenly, what was hidden becomes historic. You weren't misunderstood because you were wrong. You were misunderstood because you were early. Number 14. Your destiny isn't to fit in. It's to recode humanity. You were never meant to blend into this world. You were designed to reprogram it. That uneasy feeling you've always had, that quiet knowing that you don't belong anywhere, is because your purpose was never to adapt to the existing system. It was to upgrade it. You came into this realm carrying codes, divine frequencies that subtly alter human consciousness. Every hardship you've endured, every betrayal that hollowed you out, every season of isolation that made you question your worth, all of it was spiritual engineering. You were being fine-tuned to become a living transmitter of a higher vibration. While others sought acceptance, you were being recalibrated for impact. Your silence wasn't emptiness. It was data collection. Your pain wasn't punishment. It was downloading wisdom that words can't teach. The very loneliness that once broke you became the frequency through which you'd later heal others. You weren't built to echo the world's patterns. You were sent to overwrite them. And that's why you've always disrupted spaces simply by existing. You don't follow energy. You generate it. You don't adopt narratives. You create new ones. You've probably noticed how people often shift when you walk into a room. Conversations change. Energies rearrange. Truths surface. That's not coincidence. Your aura speaks a language older than speech. It awakens something dormant in others, reminding them of what they've forgotten, their divinity, their purpose, their truth. You are living frequency correction, and your presence alone begins the recoding process. But it's your full activation, when you finally speak without fear, that will send ripples across collective consciousness. This is why your journey couldn't be easy. The system you came to reprogram had to test your integrity before trusting your influence. Every delay, every misunderstanding, every period of being unseen was building your stability so your power wouldn't corrupt when revealed. You were being trained to handle spiritual voltage, to speak words that don't just inform minds but transform DNA. When you finally move in full expression, humanity won't just listen, they'll evolve. You're not here to convince, you're here to recalibrate. The world won't recognize you by title or trend, but by resonance. And when your voice activates, it won't just be heard, it will rewrite what it means to be human. From the very first breath, your life has been far from ordinary. Every twist, every storm, every moment of being misunderstood or isolated has carried a purpose far greater than survival. You weren't placed here to blend in, to follow rules, or to seek approval. You were designed to disrupt, to awaken, and to recode the world around you. From birth, you carried a frequency that shifts realities, a spiritual blueprint encoded with wisdom and authority that can't be replicated or cloned. Every heartbreak, betrayal, and challenge was not punishment. It was initiation, refinement, and preparation for a destiny that surpasses human understanding. You've walked paths others couldn't follow, endured pressures that would have broken ordinary souls, and witnessed truths that most are blind to. Yet every experience, every hardship, every season of waiting was equipping you to operate at a level of consciousness that transcends ordinary limits. You weren't ignored, overlooked, or forgotten. You were hidden, preserved, and stabilized, preparing you to carry a frequency powerful enough to awaken dormant truths in others. You exist as a bridge between dimensions, a living transmitter of divine intelligence, and a mirror reflecting the hidden shadows of the world around you. You are not just a survivor. You are a catalyst, an evolutionary prototype, and a recalibrator for humanity itself. The world may never fully understand you, and many will misread or misjudge your journey, but that doesn't diminish your impact. Everything you've endured has been forging a spirit capable of standing alone, yet carrying the power to transform millions. Your purpose isn't to fit in. It's to stand out in ways that unsettle the old, reveal the hidden, and awaken the new. Your life is a living testament to the power of divine design, a story of endurance, authenticity, and authority that cannot be duplicated or denied. If this resonates with you, if you feel the truth of your journey and the weight of your calling, make sure to stay connected. Subscribe to this channel for more revelations that honor the depth of your path. Like this video if it speaks to your soul. Comment your experiences and insights below so your voice joins the conversation, and share it with others who are ready to recognize their own power and purpose. Your story matters, your energy matters, and together we amplify the truth that the world is not ready for, but you were born to carry. God bless you.